Our next session is a thought-provoking panel discussion with industry leaders on the forces driving changes in the intelligent automation market, exploring key adoption trends and practical insights from real-life and scaled intelligent automation initiatives. Presenting to you a panel discussion of Future of Automation, moderated by Saurabh Sharma, Assistant Vice President, Product Marketing at Datamatics. Over to you, Saurabh.
Thanks, Mithul. So, hello everyone. So we have a great panel here. People with lots of experience in automation space, enterprise IT. We have a CIO. We have a lot of senior leaders who have done the drill of automating large enterprise engagements. So I think it's going to be a very good discussion. So let's get started. So I'll just briefly introduce the panelists here. So first is Chander Sharma, Managing Partner at BizXL Solutions. Chander, if you can just wave. Thank you. Jason Salmani, CEO of Cano AI. Thomas Helfrich, Vice President, Intelligent Automation Practice at Systems of Technologies. Yeah, that's nice. Isaac Scaolick, President and CIO, StarCIO, who is really a StarCIO. So great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And someone who has a lot of knowledge of automation space and he knows everything, whether it's RPA, IDP, AI, ML. Neeraj Nagpal, co-founder and head of America's Acronotics. So thanks, gentlemen, for joining us today. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So you have implemented automation, whether it's RPA, IDP, or just the AI ML tools in the enterprises. So if we talk about AI in its various guises, so machine learning, natural language processing, deep learning, computer vision, that market is heating up. But do you think we are at the inflection point, and has it entered mainstream adoption? And what do you think in terms of how the growth forward looks like from your perspective? So Jason, maybe if you can just, we will start with you.
Yeah, Saurabh, appreciate that. So what we see from the kind of AI ML space adoption, and particularly when we talk about services that I think are more readily accessible, like natural language processing, like intelligent document processing, I think we're starting to see more adoption of these platforms because the barrier to entry is becoming a lot less, right? Companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they're coming out with solutions that are readily accessible and easily accessible for not just your, Fortune 10s, your Fortune 50s, but even your small and medium businesses. And because of that, I think we're also starting to see a large, stream of new potential AI companies that are coming out, right? Again, focusing on the intelligent document processing space, focusing on the natural language processing, even things like intelligent chatbots and so on. And what that's done is that's created a new wave of automation that's not just your, large finance, large industry leaders, but it's really allowing for those smaller businesses to leverage some of that automation capability. And what we're starting to see is more innovation coming from the small and medium businesses because of this new kind of resurgence of these applications. So I think we're still trending up. I still think there's more room, but I do think that there's a lot more adoption happening, particularly in some of those readily accessible platforms. From the actual machine learning and deep learning space, I don't personally see as much opportunity in the small and medium space. I know for the large businesses, they've been leveraging this for quite some time. But when we talk about, your $100 million to $1 billion industry, you're not seeing maybe as many use cases where it's readily accessible. They don't have a whole team of data scientists. They don't quite have what they need to start leveraging that capability, but I think that's going to come.
Okay. And Neeraj, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think some of it, what Jason said, made a lot of sense. And before I kind of go into where we are seeing the inflection point, let me see where I'm coming from and what we've seen over the last 3-4 years and how, how companies are approaching this has changed over the time, right? So when about 3-4 years back, when we were having these discussions, we used to have more and more discussions around RPA, and people were looking for this low-hanging fruit. But as from Acronotics standpoint, we work only in automation and digital transformation space. So we are having these discussions with clients only in this space. And how we approach automation is look at it from our bodies. If you look at it from senses perspective, right? So RPA is very similar to do or the hands part of it, and repetitive work over and over again. And then you're looking at more from eyes perspective. That's the IDP space, the computer vision space, where the use cases are starting to become, like Jason was saying, a lot more popular, where people are looking at a lot of these semi-structured and unstructured documents, extracting data from them, or from computer vision kind of perspective. For example, for an insurance company, we're working on actually taking phone images of what has a wreck has happened, and you can take an image and then send it, and then you can compare it, etc. So those kind of use cases on computer vision side and IDP side are becoming a lot more popular. And then you look at it from more, again, continuing our journey through the senses of our body, right? So if you look at our mouth or our ears, getting into the NLU, NLP, and NLG space, where we are seeing a lot of innovation now. I think the technologies, like Jason was saying, has become a lot mature, and we are seeing a lot of traction in the NLP space, not only from simple use cases where you have requests coming in and you have to kind of identify the intent, identify the entities in it, and then respond to it. That's more one kind of an interaction, but more also on the virtual assistant and chatbot space, because as I think Lex has become more popular, and people have seen how voice conversation, they've seen the maturity that the technology in the back end is showing. They're looking at more and more business use cases and actually thinking that, yes, this can be deployed. And thus, we are having a lot of discussions with our clients. A lot of opportunities that we're working on are working towards this NLP space and virtual assistant space, where you're implementing the chatbots. You're also converting that into having voice integration with different channels like WhatsApp, etc. And then you get into that whole the brain space of the things, right, where your ML, predictive analytics, and there the smaller companies are taking time to adopt, unless there is a point solution that is specific for their industry, that somebody has taken a platform, built something that is very specific for that particular use case, and thus has done the first hard work. Those kind of use cases are becoming a lot more popular and are getting adopted. From large scale implementations, large organizations are taking up a lot of kind of predictive analytics use cases, but for smaller companies, I think it's still some time where the platforms become mature enough, where they become low code enough for a smaller company with lower data science skills can actually adopt that. So
Yeah. And Isaac, from your perspective, what do you think enterprises are adopting? How is it shaping up?
No, very, very similar, but here's what I would say. Anytime organizations start adopting technologies, they're looking for low-hanging fruit, things that they can understand around a technology, but also apply to areas that are delivering or have the potential to deliver a lot of business value. So you see a lot of automation in places that are, RPAs against certain steps, or orchestrating certain processes, or triggers off of events. And at the same time, that's the sort of the action side of the equation. The insight of the equation, where we're doing machine learning, we're doing computer vision, we're doing search engine and analytics on natural language processing. That's the insights start of the equation, and organizations have put up data scientists. They started with data visualizations. They've done some basic machine learning types of things, basic NLP things. When you start wanting to put those two things together is the next wave. And you're starting to see this in areas where there's specialty technologies that are already bringing in both the insight side of the equation and the action side of it. So technologies like AI ops that can take IT information around alerts, group alerts together, correspond them to a single incident, and then do automation off of it. There are platforms that do both sides of it. In computer vision in manufacturing, you have technologies that are out there that will scan the images, recognize parts, find defects, and be able to action into the MEP system what to do about poor quality parts that are coming down the conveyor belt. So where there's integration already happening, you're starting to see that, sort of marrying of machine learning and automation. It's going to happen more in medium-sized businesses as they are building up more of the skill sets, and they're looking at more greater opportunities to use both the machine learning side of things and the automation side of things.
Okay, that's good to know. So, Chander, I think amongst all of us, processes better than anybody else. And I am always a proponent of don't throw your bots at broken processes, not going to deliver much value. So from that perspective, what's your view in terms of process reengineering, process optimization? And you are a lean expert. You've done it at so many companies. Doing that before actually automating via RPA. What's your view? How important it is? Any anecdotes or?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Saurabh. Many times what we find is organizations are trying to establish capability for a long term, but they want to take a very short-sighted approach. And that's where the dichotomy comes in play. So if you're trying to create, build a building which is very tall, you need to have a strong foundation. And for any organization or enterprise, the way they create and deliver value using is through processes. If I were to create an analogy, our body has blood flowing, So if there is a choke point in our body and we try to accelerate the flow of blood with a machine, now what will happen in our body? It is going to create more stress and more problems. And that's what we try to do. When we throw a bot, out there on a process which is suboptimal, which has those constraints, those choke points. So unless the process has been clearly streamlined, the bot is going to create more inefficiency at a faster pace. So the logic of automating does not align very well. And that's why the organizations struggle. Now they buy a lot of bot licenses, and now they are not seeing the value. The value is not there because the foundation is not there. So as they start to create those processes which are with a lean lens, which are making the value from the lens of the customer flow to the processes, they are going to get more ROI, significantly higher ROI for the effort that they're putting in automation. Also, if you look at, there is a lot of time enterprises spend in identifying the technology partner, identifying the technology solution, and that time is already so long. When it comes to implementation, they start rushing through that phase, which is the foundational piece, and that's where the value is lost. So if we keep that perspective when we are looking at process RPA or any automation, we create a strong foundation of processes, streamline the processes, look at a lean lens of what is adding value, what is creating value in the process, maximize that value creation, and then minimize the waste in the process before we look at automation. Because then once we have done this groundwork, what we are doing is we are accelerating the effectiveness in the organization, not just the accelerating the waste production. And so this is a very fundamental thing, but many times everybody knows, but because the time spent in the initial phase, right, selecting the right vendor, developing the technology solution is so large, now they're under pressure to quickly execute. And when you quickly execute the critical part, you get suboptimal results. So I think the importance of re-engineering the processes before automation makes absolute sense.
So Thomas, this is for you. An IDP, we all see it's growing, but what are your thoughts on how effective a solution it is for tackling unstructured data? Any good best practices, insights from what you have seen in the market?
Yeah, I mean, intelligent document processing is a really cool and amazing technology that's progressing rapidly. And it ties to some of the other questions you've had of like adoption and inflection points. So best practices. Maybe you can talk about this, but just maybe broadly first. I don't believe that I think we're not quite to an inflection point yet on any of these technologies. I think it's really important to understand that small, medium business is about to flood into this market because of democratization of some of the AI systems. You may not need a data scientist. You can just consume it. I think that type of volume that's about to come into the market is going to redefine how we do things like intelligent document processing and others, and how we deliver it, and the cost and the value propositions. So best practices around how to do this is honestly, get the humans out of the way as fast as possible to allow the technology to actually work. Let your organization embrace digital workers. Let them understand that the technology is built by humans, and you're going to be in the loop, but you don't have to be in as much as you need to. Take a few steps of, proof of concept, go to a pilot and get it in production. If you need to change your foundational pieces, like your process is really just ridiculous because it was made by humans, change it. Take the time, because I believe we are still in the very, very early stages of this technology, just by the proof that a whole market segment that's below Fortune 500 has really not entered it, let alone individuals or super small businesses and entrepreneurs. So I believe we are. Our kids will be having this type of a panel going. Our parents were so old, and they had. And if I look at the last 5 years of how intelligent automation has really progressed from a capability standpoint and almost become commoditized. I hate to say that, but it does. It's coming down then to what value at what cost do you need to implement it, which brings in that whole market by itself. So best practices, like any technology, accept it, challenge it, verify, trust, but move forward from it and start going to an innovation as a service buy. Don't just find one thing and go, great, we automated our invoice processing or our mortgage forms or healthcare claims or whatever. If that's your mindset as an organization, you've just now limited what intelligent automation actually delivers, which is a journey, it's a path, and it's a forward motion of a digital workforce that's coming. And it's just the companies are going to completely go away if they have not embraced it in the next 2 to 3 years. I think that's the inflection point that companies are going to come to. Like, holy cow, our laggard ways. We just became Blockbuster, Kmart, and we are a huge company. Luckily we have capital. These big companies have capital to go figure it out. But there's a lot of smaller companies that are mid-sized, small. They're going to take huge leaps because they're going to have an incredible exponential capacity and a mindset that's going to adopt an already accelerating technology base.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I answered your question, except I think it's.
No, you did. You did.
Document processing, one of the technologies that embrace the best practice that needs to happen is humans need to allow themselves to be out of the way to do it after you kind of get past that POC and pilot method. That's honestly the best advice I can give from just a broad perspective.
So moving forward from where Chander left, process optimization process is important. Another technology that we keep hearing about, and this happens in a lot of enterprises, you buy 1,000 bot licenses and quickly run out of process and then realize, oh, there are not 1,000 processes to automate. So process mining, process discovery. So Isaac, from your perspective, how do you see that shaping out? Is it picking up? Just some quick observations.
Well, look, I think organizations need to attack this using an agile process and an agile mindset. In StarCIO's agile framework, we are always doing discovery in every sprint with delivery in every sprint. So we're always looking at how we're going to fill the backlog with something new and different. It means that the organization is always looking for the next opportunity to improve things, the next opportunity to automate things or get more intelligence out of what they're doing. Like what was said earlier, part of what we recommend is using Six Sigma processes. So when you start looking at a particular area, go do a very lightweight analysis, an end-to-end flow of what's going on there. You're going to find places where you want to completely re-engineer, that there's an opportunity to build something from the ground up, and you're going to go use a low-code platform or go just reinvent what the business process. You're going to find some things that are just dated and no longer necessary, and you're going to find other places that, when you have, lots of people working on a particular area, finding ways to use automation to take out some of the tasks. And part of the reason you want to do this, it's not just about bringing bots into our organizations, it's the human element of explaining to the people who are doing the work today how you're changing the process, how you're transforming, where the value add steps are, where you're going to provide augmented intelligence to them so that they can make faster and smarter decisions, and where some of the things that they used to do that were monotonous, that were expensive, that were potentially hurting your quality, where you're going to use technology to automate some of those steps. So marrying things like automation with Six Sigma analysis to find the value adds, and then using Agile as a way to iteratively do your discovery and implementation is a way so that the organization's always looking for the next opportunity.
Yeah. Jason, do you want to add to that? What are your thoughts?
To tie on to what Isaac said, and he had some great points, a lot of organizations are not understanding the value of process discovery. And what I mean by that is some of these processes that they want to automate, they just want to see the process automated, and they don't want to go through the effort of understanding or documenting or re-engineering their processes. And what that creates is, kind of like Chander was saying, an automation that's not going to stand the test of time. And that's not what we want to see, right? You don't want to invest in an automation, a small automation journey, not thinking about the long term, and then see your investments potentially not giving you any ROI or benefit long term. So what we found is that when we're engaging with organizations, we have to influence them. We have to, and it's not all organizations. Some organizations do understand, but a lot of them, they don't quite see the value in. They already know the process. Their people do it, right? They do it day to day. Why do we need to document this? Why do we need to understand this? But they don't realize that going from a manual human process to an automated process is not just a one-to-one, right? And like Chander was saying, if you automate a bad process, you're going to do bad things faster, right? You're going to get the same results, terrible potential results in a faster amount of time. And that's sometimes, so by having the value in that discovery phase, in the re-engineering phase, a lot of our automations, the entire journey, a majority is actually spent doing discovery, right? These are processes, again, that people do day in, day out. They don't have documented. They don't have training documents. They don't have any sort of, this is what we do. It's just the person that's been doing it for 15 years exactly knows what the process is. So we have to work with them to understand and to really dig deep and to get them to give us the rules and the decisions and all the things that make the process what it is, so that we can figure out what's the best way to put this into a robot's hands. Because robot and people are different, right? Bots are different than people. They handle things differently. And there is a joint, right? Some of the process needs to be handled by a human, right? That human in the loop aspect, we're starting to see a lot more of that. And then to tie on to one thing that Thomas was saying in regards to, what we're seeing with automation and how there needs to be an adoption. I know personally, I've gotten rid of companies like my banking company because their technology was not up to snuff, right? Their web portal wasn't great. Their response time wasn't great. If organizations don't start adopting automation, things like response times, SLAs for documents, that's going to change where people are going. And me as a consumer, I'll go to an organization that can handle my mortgage faster, that can handle my bank loans faster, that can handle all my things faster, versus an organization potentially that, may take longer. They have older technology, and that'll change where these organizations will be in the next 5-10 years. So to kind of go back, it all does start with understanding what your processes are and understanding that going from a manual human worker to a robot is going to be in itself as a task, right? The discovery, the re-engineering is a task. So,
yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. So one quick question, 10 seconds for everyone. So socio-economic aspect, let's get to that. So with COVID-19 vaccines coming up, do we see and the number of active cases decreasing? What do you think in terms of future of automation for the next 6 to 18 months? Just 10 seconds. So let's start with Chander. Chander, you are on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a very relevant question, Saurabh. Over the last 1 year or so, organizations and the business leaders have learned that their teams can actually work very comfortably in a virtual environment and still deliver results. So that is a huge learning, and I think post COVID-19, as things stabilize, we are not going to go back to the initial phase pre-COVID in complete totality. That's given. So it will probably be a blended model. The second part is what people have realized is there are more silos. So where people are feeling more stressed. So in terms of the next phase, next 6 to 18 months, what I see is people, the organizations, the business leaders are going to lay a lot of emphasis on enabling collaboration and enabling employees, making the processes simpler so that it is less stressful when they are working in a virtual environment. It's not as easy today, in a real world. I can walk to somebody's place, somebody's workstation, and ask a question. In a virtual environment, it's different. So how can we use technology to enable the collaboration and inclusiveness of our employees across different geographical regions, in different places? That is going to be a primary key focus for a great opportunity to transform the business models for organizations. I think that would be the key.
And Thomas, just quick 10 seconds. What's your take?
No doubt, intelligent automation will be a burning platform, not on the CIO's table, but on the CEOs. And I think if you look at the top things that will come out of what's going on in the next 6 to 18 months, it'll be cybersecurity, it'll be automating process and revenue streams, and rethinking how our culture of our company is really going to work in a virtual environment. Those three keys are certainly bubbled up to the top, where before they may have been in the 4th or 5th spot on the CEO's burning platform. Automating process, executing process day in, day out is certainly got to lift up because of what the pandemic exposed was already an issue.
Neeraj, quick 10 seconds.
Sure. So I think, again, when COVID hit initially, there was some short-term impact on the activity that was going on around automation space. But what it has actually done is, in all the leadership meetings, all the leadership teams, the importance of automation has become even more stronger, even more that ability to adopt or meaning to drive to adopt automation has actually increased almost tenfold from where we were before this. So this 1 year has actually been very transformational in where people are thinking they're going, and thus you've seen that whole transition of where predictability is important and automation can give that productivity. So the two things that I would say are really important from next things are IDP and contact center automation, because contact center automation was getting done a lot from these BPO kind of places, is becoming a lot more important.
Yeah. Thank you. So that was a very exciting discussion. We never have enough time. There's so much to discuss when time is not there. So thanks, gentlemen, for joining me today. It was very nice talking to you. So yeah, that's it from our side. Over to you, Muthu.
Wow, it was amazing to hear you all. Thank you all for joining and giving us a peek into the future. If you have any questions, feel free to write into the chat box and we will reply to you online.